I have another list, which is, mainly Ash's content and, discussion of World of Warcraft. I want to go over it with you guys today. And it's a lot of topics that I think you will enjoy. So sit back, relax, get some snacks, maybe a little popcorn angle, and maybe a little, hydration nation of the Poland Springs and all that good stuff. So let's begin. Basically, the topic for today is, can Ashes replicate World of Warcraft's success? And will it fit into the new standard of being its own MMO or just another clone of an MMO in the industry when the game is officially out? I thought about more of this as I kept going on, and I was like, you know what? World of Warcraft has dominated the MMO, space, right, for like nearly 2 decades now, right? And it's set the standard for what an MMO can be. And, with the new contender of like, Ashes coming up, can it replicate WoW success? Does it need to replicate WoW success? Or does it just need to be its own entity and live in its own atmosphere and not worry about, anything else going on from any other competitor out there, just being its own, standard thing? And to be honest with you, I genuinely believe that, to understand if Ash's creation can match WoW success, we need to like look at the meaning of success, right? Like for World of Warcraft standard, it's a mix of like massive dedicated player bases that have been following the game for so long, and it's only grown and grown, and obviously it went through ups and downs, but overall the player base is still massive. It's still one of the most played MMOs to this day. It is the standard of what an MMO is, whether it's retail, whether it's classic, heck, whether even people play private servers, right? And overall, it's what people enjoy the most for MMOs that, Blizzard delivered over the periods of time through its up and downs. I really think that, it holds a really tight spot in the community and still beloved by a lot of people. And honestly, we have to look at also the culture impact that it did, even in the early 2000s, taking social media by storm in the internet and having people run to their local game stores waiting for, midnight releases. Remember that thing? That was honestly one of my favorite things to do back in the day, is wait for the midnight release or get in-store merchandise for, the game that I love, or even get it online, right? Whether that was like through eBay or whatever. And also the ability to adapt through expansions and updates that it did, like we were talking about the ups and downs before. There was expansions that were good and, is all close to our heart, and we loved those expansions. Then there was expansions that were absolutely horrible, and there was a downfall, obviously, in Blizzard at certain points. And for some people, they still feel like there's a downfall to this day. But to be honest, I think World of Warcraft is, holding off pretty strong, and I think retail is holding off pretty strong as well. And it's a reason why, it remains relevant. And through, the massive raids that they have, along with, the highlights of these raids and the highlights of BlizzCon itself, when they bring BlizzCon back, that's going to be a big thing too. And, the multitude of iconic characters that people all know and love for World of Warcraft, which we'll visit a little bit also later on in the video as well, and some comparison for other key topics we're going to talk about. But when it comes to all that stuff, like that's all the meaning of success for WoW. What is all the meaning of success for Ashes of Creation in comparisons to that? And I really feel like Ashes of Creation, it aims to, break a new ground, right? And it's a new ground with its player-driven economy, first things first, and an evolving world, and an intense focus on, just freedom and immersion. But with these, elements that sound really compelling to, new players or even returning MMO-style players to a brand new game, are those elements enough to capture the hearts of millions? Replicating WoW's success and everything that we mentioned, it's no small feat, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, it's not just about like the numbers, but like creating a game that feels alive, right? And you want to be compelled to play with various play styles. So I really feel like that at the end of the day, giving the time that Ashes, slowly develops and continues to push through its alphas and its betas upon the release, and then eventually having, a stronger and stronger, testing of gameplay through the months of the official release, and seeing, where they could have done better or see where they can improve at. I think eventually Ashes of Creation is really going to captivate more people than we think. And given the time and all the testing and the improving on the updates that they do on a weekly basis already, along with just the alpha, I have a good feeling that Ashes of Creation will find its own niche. And this is just a personal opinion, right? It will find its own niche in the MMO scene, and it won't need to heavily rely on on the success of what others have done in the past, whether it's competitor companies such as WoW or, Lost Ark, Guild Wars 2, etc., Throne and Liberty. That's, another recent one. But I really think it will find its own measures of success, and eventually maybe it'll become so popular one day will they'll have their own like live stage events, whether it's online like a direct, or maybe even their own like con, so to say, right? Their own Ashes Con or whatever, right? But that's what I think that they can measure their success to be, depending on how well the game is developed, from a multitude of things, with how fun the game is, the lore, the raids, the PvE, the PvP, everything that Ashes of Creation has to offer. But this brings me to my next question. Let's say if Ashes winds up succeeding and blowing it all out of the park, is it a game for everyone? And that's something that we have to discuss. Now, unlike WoW, which balances accessibility and depth, Ashes of Creation is being designed as a more complex MMO, right? And it's, intricate systems such as like, the node progression and player driven economies, stuff like that sounds really nice and it sounds really fun. And I'm actually compelled as a player that enjoys, complexity in my games. But is it too intimidating for a casual player base, such as in the standards of like, World of Warcraft, where you can kind of just hop in the game and, do your dungeons, be a part of it, especially if you're just playing classic, right? Or just do simple questing. You don't even need to do Mythic Plus in retail if you really don't want to. You could stick to delves, you can stick to story-based raids, you can stick to just the simple things in, WoW, just to have a fun in the game and, not really feel that you have to meet a certain measure or requirement if you don't want to apply yourself to that. And is Ashes of Creation in that sense too intimidating for the casual player, for them being a part of it, and they feel like they can't really go through all these systems because there's just too much on the plate, right? And in my opinion, I feel like, while hardcore MMO fans might love the challenge, it's unclear whether, Ashes of Creation will offer that same universal appeal. If you're a casual gamer looking for like a simple pick up and play experience, I'm not too sure if this will be your game. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because, at the end of the day, Ashes is going to carve its own niche instead of trying to be everything for everyone. I mean, even Steven Sharif has said online too that he is going to basically focus on, what content people can complete. Not everyone's going to be able to acquire the top 1% of things. And this is going to be a game for anyone and for everyone. If you're simply looking to do PvE, you could do PvE. If you're simply being a part of just PvP, you could stick to PvP, and there will be a multitude of different things that you can apply yourself to, whether it's just professions or building a node, helping within a city, just hunting, gathering, anything, that you want to apply yourself to, you can basically do, and you don't need to feel stressed or compelled to do the end game style content, whether like that happens in retail, where some people feel like if they're just not doing Mythic Plus, they're not playing the game. If they're not doing retail Mythic rating, they're not playing the game. But at the end of the day, I truthfully think that WoW has its side of the game where it is compelling to others, whether it's for the hardcore fans or the casuals. And I think Ashes of Creation, in my opinion, will have an opportunity to actually not be as complex as people think, even though it will have complex measures added to the game. I do think there will be simplicity found within the heart of its game when players actually pick it up and it's fully developed, and obviously, out of its, alpha and then over its beta stage when the game is fully out. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about that I feel like is really important and compelling to me as a player and a person that just enjoys stuff like Lord of the Rings. I enjoy the Star Wars The Old Republic, and like Harry Potter back in the day, anything that is fantasy based, right? And honestly, for me, why I mentioned those things is because it's all about lore, right? And lore is something for some people, is it a make or break for their game, and especially when it comes to an MMO. Is lore the metric for some of you guys that is a factor that it needs to either be really good for me to be a part of this game, or it doesn't need to be good at all and I could just skip the content and kind of, just go through it? Because to be honest with you, that's kind of how I felt when I was playing Throne and Liberty, right? And it's not to say Throne and Liberty might not have some type of style of compelling lore, But when I was playing Throne and Liberty, and it's no hate to the people that enjoy Throne and Liberty, but I really feel like I didn't care about what was going on. I was just skipping the dialogue anyways and just going through it. Just get me to the dungeon, get me the best piece of loot, get me to the raid. I want to see what I could do, how hard I can hit. And I just really didn't pay too much time. Now, that could be, of course, my fault as a player. I totally admit that. I'm not perfect. I'm a human being at the end of the day. There has been times where I skipped dialogue. But I really feel like with Ashes of Creation and the world that it has, I feel a little bit more compelled to it. And obviously, looking at the background of things, they have an extreme immerse amount of content on their website that shows you stuff about the lore that they want to, actually keep developing and slowly implementing in the game. When the full release is out, there could be a multitude of things, maybe even cutscenes or, actual story-based quest lines. I've even seen this happen with Lord of the Rings Online, with even with Lotro, I was playing this recently, that you go through certain quests with with Aragorn, and you're going with him, and they show you cutscenes of what was going on as you're going through the story of Lord of the Rings, and it shows you where basically Frodo and Sam are going, right? And it's just small little cutscenes from the movie themselves, which I think is absolutely awesome. And I would love to see a style like that if they were to go that far. Who knows where they'll go with it, whether it's a cutscene before a raid or a cutscene after a dungeon or just the cutscene into the game itself, or just stuff online like a mini series even that they wanted to do, or built in within their own quest system where lore is explained very well with simple detail but good enough to understand it, where we don't feel like we have to just run along and skip the dialogue. Of course, they'll keep that optional for players who don't care about lore, but I genuinely think that it's the backbone that keeps players invested into WoW. The Warcraft universe gave players a deep connection to its character and world. And for any of my Warcraft fans, that the Warcraft, the original lore, the old school lore, right? And for some people, Warcraft 1 to 3 is their epitome of what WoW is. Of course, from even just the MMO scene, from WoW to TBC to Classic, that's where they love the game the most. And people love Legion as well for its lore, and obviously with Metzen backing a lot of things and great writing. And I honestly feel like that's what really keeps a lot of players strongly connected to its world, because they love the characters and the presentation that was provided for the game that they are playing. That it's not just some kind of only a sandbox game and you're just only focusing on getting the best of the best and being better than anyone else, even though that is really good. Don't get me wrong, that is fun. But there's also meaning behind things, and I think that's what is something that I really like, that I hold so close to me. And I think that type of approach with Ashes of Creation, I think the lore is shaping up to be just as critical as WoW. If anything, the narrative, like what they're putting in, it revolves around like rediscovering a world of abandoned gods, right, and their choices, which basically shape how the world evolves. So I mean, I guess honestly, at the end of the day, if I had any small concern of it, I would say, will the story be compelling enough to hold players' interest over time? That's my minor concern, right, for Ashes of Creation, because I really feel like that they have an opportunity to really knock it out the park here with their lore and actually show some in-depthness, because they have like I said, like a laundry list of things on their website when it comes to going a little bit more in depth of the races and how the old gods are battling for eons and how the creation of those races have happened. And they have a long list of things. I'm really compelled to see how they organize that and put it within the game, or in some kind of live series that they decide to do when the future does come to that point. Now, another thing that I wanted to discuss with you guys is that I wanted to talk about basically how in depth the PvP will go, right? And I, on my last video, I know some people were saying too that, that the PvP is going to improve, and they've been, they left their comments. I've noticed a lot of the comments, and trust me, I understand. I am not perfect. I'm learning more things as I go, and I'm intrigued to know, even when I'm wrong, to improve on that so I can have more knowledge about things. So I looked more into the PvP and read a little bit more about some things, and the PvP in Ashes of Creation, obviously from this is their company that even talks about this, is is the core feature, from large scale sieges to caravan protection systems. The game promises intense competition, right? And I'm curious, in the long run at least, is that how it will compare, to other MMOs with, robust systems like, in World of Warcraft that has, arenas, you have battlegrounds, right? Even in games like Guild Wars 2 and, Black Desert, they have their own PvP and intricative systems that are in depth that makes those games unique. And even in games like, Lost Ark has its arena based system like in threes that you can, fight online as well. So I'm really curious to see what kind of actual systems they're going to have in place besides, the naval combat. I know there's even some type of mount combat that they have, hinted towards as well. And then other forms of combat such as, the sieges and the caravan battles, which is, really cool too. I've seen a lot of interesting clips that I was like, you know what, the PvP actually doesn't seem that bad the more I keep looking at it. And, the more the systems are in place, and obviously if, the alpha is stable, there's really looks to be a lot of promising things for it. And I'm actually intrigued as a player to see how, when the second archetypes come out, when the mix and matches of archetypes where, you combine them together, what kind of metas will be formed, what kind of comps will be formed, and what kind of tournaments will happen. Even in the past, looking from just their website alone, they've seemed to even have things like a battle royale in like 2020. They were even experimenting with something of that nature, which kind of looked pretty fascinating. I'm not the biggest, BR player. I've done, like Fortnite and, Warzone, don't get me wrong, and a little PUBG. I won't lie, all right? I've done my fair share of it, but I will say that, it's been some time that I've been involved with the battle royale scene. And to be honest, I got to appreciate them just, testing the waters and trying things out to see what really is going to work for them. And they've even talked about, like instant base, arenas, and trying stuff of that nature. They even have some old footage of them doing arenas, I believe in PAX during 2017, which seems really cool too. I would really love to see these systems if they're going to have like, ranks, and if there's going to be rewards to those rankings, kind of like even, when you played WoW and you would go for like rank 14, and, the higher ranks that you would get, you would acquire, new gear that would, elevate your character to a better standard, right, within PvP. For some people that gear mattered, and some people it didn't, but obviously that's a WoW thing, so that's a separate topic aside. But overall though, I think it would be pretty cool to see the titles and everything else it has to offer if they were to implement these systems once the game is actually fully released. And also they even talk about dueling, which is just an optional thing, like 1v1s and stuff like that, so that's not something that they're too stressed out that won't work out when the game is actually fully out for everyone to play. But I'm really intrigued about the systems in place and, the question of balance. Can they ensure that PvP remains rewarding without alienating, PvE players who, prefer a more cooperative experience? Success here might determine how long PvP fans stick around, right? I think the real question is balance here at the end of the day for PvP. I mean, can Ashes of Creation ensure, the PvP rewards are basically without alienating PvE players and making it feel like, a multitude of rewards are more applicable to one side versus the other. This has happened in World of Warcraft 2, where, some classes, they excel with better items in PvP through certain expansions over even some, dungeon or raid pieces, right? And vice versa for, PvE over using some pieces within PvP because those pieces were just not good for them, which led to players, basically arguing whether, this should be improved or these items need to be fixed, and, tons of forum posts, which people have always made in the past. But I guess at the end of the day is, how long will the success of either side determine how long the PvP fan, in particular for this subject, will stick around if, their items are not as good as PvE items, right? So we'll see what happens at the end of the day. That's just speculation more than anything. And I'm looking forward to the changes and everything that comes in depth when the game is actually officially, launched. And finally, one of the biggest topics, that I have here on my list, and I have here, just writing down everything that I'm looking forward to today, is basically, rating, right? And why it matters so much to, MMO players. Because, as a World of Warcraft player, right, for me, PvE players, rating is the end game for a lot of people. You know, it is the cream of the crop. It is, you know, seeing how high you can par, seeing what you could do, what your crew, and how fast you can run through things like speed running. Some people just enjoy just going through raids just to collect a multitude of gear, just to try different specs out just for fun, right? Or make alternative characters just to, you know, get their other characters leveled up. But that is the end game for them, and just get the legendaries and, you know, take cool screenshots and have fun with their friends in their discords. You know, in WoW, you know, legendary raids like, you know, Ice Crown Citadel, or even, you know, like Molten Core, or going through Black Temple, those are iconic moments in MMO's history. You know, players crave that sense of accomplishment, teamwork, and, you know, story interrogation, right? That, you know, is tied to those raids and the iconic bosses that you actually get to, you know, fight and, you know, clear through each week as you keep playing the game. And to be honest with you, rating from, you know, just what they have already within Ashes of Creation, and the massive, you know, towers that they have in place, you know, from going through Steel Bloom, you know, I was doing that with my friends, and I was like saying, man, this is gonna be an awesome place one day when they really, you know, officially just keep developing and, you know, further progressing everything within here. And, you know, whether they change certain mobs, or maybe change certain layers within Steel Bloom, or if we're going through Karfif, you know, if we're going through the Great Tower, and you know, adding the lore all over there and seeing what they have to do there, and, you know, actually showing what kind of loot is going to be able to be achieved from these things. It has a lot of promise, you know, and it seems like there's going to be a lot of, like, you know, dynamic bosses, you know, tied to just the state of the world alone. And I'm really looking forward to raiding being just as, or even better, or just being good overall in comparison to World of Warcraft. At the end of the day, WoW is, you know, close to my heart, and that's why I talk about it so much, because I love my WoW community. And me as a player who is converting to playing Ashes Creation, but also still playing WoW, I love to, you know, talk about both things and together, because I really feel like there's something special here with Ashes that they can do to even, you know, either be on the same scale or outscale, or have its own scale at the end of the day in comparisons to WoW raids. And I feel like, you know, the places that they have already, I can see breathtaking moments happen in the future, which I'm really much looking forward to. I'm just looking at right now, where will it be enough to create unforgettable moments that rivals WoW's best moments, right? And that's what I think PvE players are going to be, you know, watching closely in particular. So that is the end of the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I just want to ask you, you know, in the comments below, to be polite, be formal, don't get packed up, settle down, lock it in, all that good stuff. And, you know, just to ask you one more time, can Ashes of, you know, Creation replicate WoW's success, or does it need to find a niche little spot within the MMO scene to live and thrive on its own accord? Let me know your thoughts below. Much love to you. Keep on keeping on. All that good stuff. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. You know what's crazy? I'm really showing the paper and stuff, and I gotta stop showing it, bro. Like, I'm blind. Like, I'm not doing this via Braille, bro. I promise. I am... Editor, you gotta pack my ass up.